The patient journey is probably the most rewarding. And when we start doing it, we had to try it with the patients, and we still have a few people, like 95%, 97% of our customers are psychologists and psychiatrists, but we have a small group of people who are actually trying to do this. Mostly that's a group of people who pretty much tried the traditional therapy and it didn't work.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome to another episode of Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. This is the podcast where innovation meets wellness. Today we're joined by Peter Oykhman, the dynamic leader with over 30 years of experience in software development, business development, and entrepreneurship. As the CEO and co-founder of PsyTechVR, he's pioneering the use of virtual reality therapy to transform mental health treatment. He also serves as the co-chair of the VR/AR Association's health vertical, driving the future of XR in healthcare. And with his company, Core Partners, he's been at the forefront of software innovation for over 2 decades. From AI to virtual reality, from business strategy to mental wellness, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. Please enjoy our episode with PsyTechVR's CEO, Peter Oykhman. Welcome back to Personalized. I'm here with Peter Oykhman. Hi, Peter. How are you?
How are you? Good. I mean, it's snowing in Maryland, but other than that, I'm good.
For sure. We're covered here in Vancouver, and I can't believe it. It's so cold, and everyone is so wimpy about it, including myself. I'm from the East Coast of Canada, and we're used to much colder, but now I've almost lived out here longer than back there, so it's been kind of shocking to be in the cold again. But I'm really excited to be talking to you today about PsyTechVR, because I absolutely love the organization that you've put together, and I'm interested in asking you about the technology and what your company does and how it helps people. And, I thought who better to chat with about it than the CEO himself. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to share. It's very exciting venture. It's not my first venture, but it's definitely one of the most exciting ones.
Oh, good. Okay, so tell our audience, which is basically integrative practitioners, both naturopathic doctors, integrated and functional medicine physicians, nurse practitioners, and so on. Tell us about your company and what you do.
So we started the company around 2020, 2021, around COVID, and we do mental health and wellness in virtual reality. So it's honestly, it started with my appreciation of technology. I tried virtual reality, and it was like, oh, wow, I want to do something with it.
Yes. Let me in for sure.
Yeah. So we were trying to figure out what to do with it. We had a couple different options, honestly. Basically, my partner and I, Daniel and I, we're both came from a technology. I was just trying to figure out what's the best use case. And I keep telling Daniel that this is a great technology, but we have to find the use case. And after multiple conversations with different people related to learning and simulation and such, we talked to the psychologists, and we figured that it's probably would be one of the best applications, for us, what we've seen, to get involved in a psychiatry. It's like, I know nothing about psychology and psychiatry, but I think it could be pretty good, right? So my approach, because it's not my first company, I firmly believe I never really articulated it this way, but recently I read the presentation which essentially the title was, are you building a pain pill or a vitamin? And that's how I actually felt that we have to build something that would be completely different and could actually has the potential to change the way people are doing things, and people are thinking about the whole mental health and wellness. And to my surprise, psychology and psychiatry has been so conservative in their tool set in terms of technology, and it's like, well, maybe this is our chance. So our goal was to talk to about 100 psychologists and psychiatrists, and we did. Then we start building a software. We got our board of advisors, and now we've got a really, really good board of advisors. And it's been a journey. I honestly, I was just talking to a friend of mine, and I told him that honestly, if I would know that it will take that long and it will be so painful, I probably wouldn't do that.
Right.
But it's kind of too late.
It's definitely too late.
So what we do is really two things. I mean, we're focusing on anxiety. We're doing exposure therapy. So we have a pre-built scenarios, but we're also utilizing AI to build custom scenarios. We're adding a custom sounds, basically using another AI. We're helping with the prompting using a third AI. We also have a piece with a conversational AI where you could talk to and practice your conversations with AI. And we're also focusing on the mental wellness part, where you could transition from exposure therapy to mental wellness to breathing exercise, meditation, and such virtual traveling. And we do it with CBT or EMDR. So modalities. We're actually adding some other stuff, but again, we do some stuff with OCD. But main focus is various forms of anxiety.
Yeah. Well, that's very well said. My experience with your company has been great. Full disclosure, I've tried lots of these tools because we work in anxiety. And, people come to see naturopaths for anxiety quite often. Panic disorder and phobia a little bit less, but it's picking up. But anxiety is a big part of most of our practices. And what I found unique about your tool is how you've been able to incorporate all of these different facets that make it easier for the clinician. So being able to transition back and forth from safe space virtual zone to actual exposure therapy, to actually be able to do in safe space EMDR or CBT, to be able to add different sounds and guided meditations or just sound therapy, and be able to switch back and forth. I really like, because it makes the session so interactive.
100%. And our main goal was, because we were building these things for, just psychologists and psychiatrists, clinicians. We didn't expect them to be an experts in IT.
Exactly.
So we were trying intentionally to make it as easy and as kind of intuitive as possible, because we realized that it will be a great tool, but not very convenient, not very easy to use. Nobody is going to use it. And we specifically, it's called the UI UX. User interface, user experience. And we went through a few iterations with UI UX, and we're still improving it. But thank you. It's we're trying to do our best to make it as easy as possible.
Right. I can tell that the intent is there. When you're using the platform, you can actually tell that, which is nice. Like let's say someone's watching this who has no idea about use cases for VR, but we all know that mindfulness meditation, EMDR, CBT, breathing techniques, all of these things will have evidence for supporting anxiety reduction programs. But why VR?
honestly, it's one of the most natural things. Not my intent to compare ourselves to like, Musk or anything, but because we're outsiders,
Mhm.
right? We could take a look at this from a different point of view that gives us a certain advantage. And when we start looking and talking to the psychologists and psychiatrists, and they said, well, imaginary exposure, and we're like, do you have people who are having issues with it, imaginary exposure? And they're
Mhm.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was like, do you know what they're actually thinking? Yeah, we're not quite sure what actually they have in mind. And it was like, we can show you. It's like we can actually show you. We could actually create this scenario where you will see what your patient will be experiencing, and you could do a gradual exposure because it's like we could be the multiple levels
Mhm.
and such. And that was sort of a natural for us. And I know that it's like if people never tried the virtual reality, for sure, it maybe doesn't seem natural, but anybody who did try virtual reality, I think honestly, the virtual reality is the wrong kind of a term because I would say it's alternative reality, right?
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
because your brain doesn't really know the difference.
Yeah.
And that was my kind of aha moment. So, we got the VR headsets, and, the first thing you're playing a little game like, ping pong. And after 5 minutes playing a ping pong, they have this table in front of you, and I know that the table is not real, but I'm still trying to put my
Yeah.
headset, I mean these controllers on a table.
Right.
I was like, I know that it's not real.
Mhm.
I get it, but still my brain cannot process that it's not real. So it's super cool, and I think especially with psychology, where I read a book from Elizabeth McMahon, and she said that the one of the problems with imaginary exposure is you're asking people to imagine something they've been trying to avoid. So and that's a controversy. So essentially, they've been trying to avoid this their whole life, right? And now you're asking them to imagine this. So where we using especially like predefined scenarios or build, AI, we could build this for you. It could be totally custom. It could, with the visual sounds. That's what we do. We're actually building people something that is hard to reconstruct. Essentially, you're trying to in your mind to reconstruct the trauma, right, or some traumatic experience. You don't want to do this, and it's not always what you want to. Like some people have a good imagination or too good imagination. Some people don't have imagination, and that could be very problematic. Where we will show you. Tell us what was that, and we'll show you.
Exactly. Exactly. You bring up a few good points there. The first is just to help the audience differentiate between imaginary exposure and virtual reality, or alternative reality, as you're now describing it, which I like. Imaginary exposure for phobia, for example, would be to close your eyes and think about the experience. Where with your company, we're going there. We're going into these sort of like video game or movie or photo experiences. But what I found and what I teach people when using this tool is for the first 5 minutes, your brain will think, okay, this is a photo, or it's a video, or if it were user computer generated, maybe pixelated a little bit. Not that your system is at all really, the ones that are generated. But after 5 minutes, all of that doesn't really matter because the brain is engaged. And what a better way to practice the tools we know are effective than to be in your own generated safe space using the AI inputs that you have. Like, so for example, when I use the tool, I say, well, what's the place where you feel most calm, most relaxed, most comfortable? And they simply describe it. We press go, and in 30 seconds, their whole world is transformed and they are there. And that's where we practice the tools. How did you think of that? Were you like in a meditative space and come up with that? Where did that come from?
So basically, again, we're outsiders. We're looking at this, and there is a good thing about it and a bad thing about it, right? The good thing is we know what technology could do. I've been doing a technology my whole life. I know what it's capable of, right? And if you're asking the right questions, if we are talking to it, it's like, I mean, honestly, my goal was to talk to about 100 professionals, 100 psychologists and psychiatrists. And later on, I discovered that, one of these, TED Talks that the guy is saying, like, yeah, if you want to build something, you have to talk to 100 people.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, interesting. So I'm still trying to talk to about 100, psychologists, psychiatrists a year, because again, it's important to understand what's going on. Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
But when people are telling me, I was asking them how the ideal session should look like, right? Forget about technology, forget about, how do you want this to go, right? What do you want this to be? And they're telling me that, tell the system what I want to see, and the system will create it. And, basically I could modify it. I could create this, gradual thing. I could add a sound because, one of our advisors, he said that, and he's Skip Rizzo, and he's a big guy, in the whole PTSD saying, virtual reality, PTSD. He started doing it in the mid-90s.
Wow.
He said that add a crying baby to any PTSD scenario, and that would immediately will create a reaction. Doesn't really matter if it was a crying baby in the scenario before or not. So that sort of thing. And then we basically step by step try to implement these kind of ideas that we started with the predefined scenarios, then start using AI and using more and more AI, helping clinicians to go to this essentially our goal that tells the system what they want to create, and system will go and do this. Turns out that it's real. We can do that. We're actually kind of right now it's a static picture. It will be a video or, essentially 6 degrees of freedom, probably, later this year, where people actually could move around. But that's an idea that just allow people to create this custom environment that was never an option. That's why, as I said, we're building a pain pill rather than a vitamin.
Right.
Because people, after, using our things, it's really hard to kind of go back to the traditional way, because that that's an option.
Definitely. Yep. Very good point. Can we talk about the evolution of this then? Because a lot of people listening will have had no exposure to the research here. I know that the bulk of it was, I believe, not done in North America, and it was mostly centered on phobia. But do you have some highlights of the journey that the research community has gone through in this realm?
Surprisingly, the research, one of the first people who done the research in this virtual reality exposure therapy was at the Georgia Tech, and that was, part of Skip Rizzo was part of this group.
Okay.
In '95, and they created this program. It's called the Virtual Vietnam, and they were treating PTSD on this Virtual Vietnam.
Wow.
In '95. Not a real virtual reality. It was basically two screens, two computer screens, but it was already something, and it was pre-built and everything, but that's something that, people done in '95. When I started researching this, to my big surprise, it was about the same time when Aaron Beck and CBT came up in mid-'60s. So actually, virtual reality has been created around the same time.
What? Wow.
Yes, Ivan Sutherland, around, mid-'60s. But it was so big. It was like a huge things,
Yeah.
and, like cables and everything. But by early 2000s, it's already, took shape of these really big glasses. And then it was getting smaller and smaller. But what my trigger was, it's a combination of a few things. And you have to understand that, again, that's a difference between, professionals and non-professionals like me in psychology. So it has to be a combination of multiple things. Devices should be pretty inexpensive. You could develop that, development tools should be pretty easy. And again, storage in it around 2021, storage was getting pretty inexpensive because assets are pretty heavy because these, virtual reality assets, files are pretty big, and internet should be pretty fast. There's a couple other things, but without any of this, it kind of doesn't really make sense. So before, storage was expensive, internet wasn't that good. I know that some companies started around 2015, 16, but the tool sets to develop these, virtual reality scenarios wasn't that good. And even us, when we started developing this, our first scenario we built, it took us about 6 months. Now, if we are, building a scenario, it's taking us about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Or less. So it's basically a journey of technology, and it only makes sense when all these pieces are kind of coming together. For me, it's production quality. So can you build a single car that will be absolutely unique, right? But it. So what? And I know the few companies who, for example, focused on a fear of flying, and they build a couple scenarios for fear of flying. Or I know a company who is, focusing on insect spiders, and they build a couple scenarios in the insect spider. I could build in insects, or right now in the 30 seconds. It's like I don't have to waste next 6 months building something like that.
Right.
That's a technology. That's what gives us an edge, and that's what gives this technology a chance to be really good and to change the whole way of thinking about this exposure therapy.
Absolutely incredible. I was just reflecting a little bit on what you were saying about how the research Georgia Tech started in the 1995 kind of time space. In the early 2000s, I was able to do the naval navigation simulators in Victoria, British Columbia here. And now thinking back on that, it's a similar idea. From a performance standpoint, we were putting in these simulations that were quite stressful and really helped us improve in a significant way. And now I see companies doing this for sports performance. For example, for baseball, there's quite a popular app that has great scenarios where people can train. Really, really exciting stuff coming. But what is it like for the patient? Because the main thing that comes up for us, right, when we say, okay, we do this, it's amazing, it's evidence-based, it's going to be helpful for you, there's a little bit of resistance. Tell us about the patient journey.
The patient journey is probably the most rewarding. And when we start doing it, we had to kind of try it with the patients, and we still have a few people, few individuals, most, like 95%, 97% of our customers are, psychologists and psychiatrists, but we have a small group of people who are actually trying to do this. Mostly that's a group of people who pretty much tried the traditional therapy and it didn't work. And we had one customer in England, in the UK, and he has a fear of heights. He came to us, he's like, I tried all the therapies, I tried it doesn't really work. Besides, psychology and, this in England sucks. It is like a 10-step system. I have to go to get to the real psychologist, through the 5-step. Doesn't really work. So if you think that it's complicated here in UK, it's even more complicated, right? So they created this system where you have to talk to some out of college kids who are not helpful. Then they will transfer you to higher next step. So anyway, so he got a headset. We downloaded the software with the fear of heights. and it was really bad. So he couldn't even go. He had like 3 steps in his house. He couldn't even go to these, three steps.
Mhm.
So in about a week of using our software, he was able to go to these 3 steps. Then he went to some shopping mall escalator, and his wife was crying. And she's like, I never knew that it's possible. Again, a lot of individuals who are coming to us, it's like a last line of defense. So it's like last option. And it's too bad that people are, it's like, it shouldn't be really a last kind of option.
Sure.
But a lot of our patients we're dealing with is basically like, we tried everything else. Can you help?
Absolutely.
And people who want to do this, it's very immersive, very engaging. It's like a game, but not a game. You have a lot of our scenarios. We have 6 degrees of freedom where you could move around, like, forward, backwards, left, right, up and down. And it's not a reality, but it's also very safe option. And we're always telling our customers, clinicians, and users that if you feel uncomfortable, take it off.
Easy out.
You don't feel comfortable, take it off, you're done, right? So it's a safe option. It gives you an opportunity to experience something in a very comfortable environment, because there is a certain isolation, visual and audio isolation. So you really kind of, it's like, dog barking or like children are running around. So it's isolation. It's very immersive. It's a game-like, but it also a next best thing between imaginary exposure and in vivo,
Yeah.
right? So if you're looking for something, a safe option between imaginary exposure and in vivo, I think VR is an excellent option. I think VR for mental health and wellness, again, in terms of your brain is ready to play this game.
Absolutely.
Because it sees this 3D environment, right? Yes, there is a certain percentage of, people is like, I see it as a game. But most of the people, they feel like if they will see their stimuli, as if they see their triggers, kind of not so gamey.
Yes, exactly.
Especially adding a sound that always helps.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements, empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
Yeah, the sounds make a difference. And the way that you facilitate that's different than what I have experienced with other organizations. What I really, really, really like is that we have an opportunity to have a high volume of exposure. So like with training, with exercise, it needs to be frequent. It doesn't have to be maximum. It needs to be frequent. It's like practicing anything. It needs to be frequent. Following a nutrition program, it needs to be daily. And so with your organization, there's this opportunity to have self-care, self-practice, self-driven.
Yes.
Tell us about that aspect of the program, how important that is to you.
That's another thing. If individuals are contacting us, we're always asking them to actually go to the professional, to the psychologist, psychiatrist, and most of them do. But you're right. You have to be motivated. There are certain things you care about. There are certain things you don't care about. But if you care about making a progress, you know where to go and what to do. And that option that provides you with option of exposure, but also provides you with the option of a mental wellness and that you could switch, and we call it safe space, switch there, do some breathing. On my unprofessional level, you're breaking this pattern. So, of these fears, phobias, anxiety, right? So you're creating this positive kind of a pathway, from exposure to this breathing, to this safe space, from this stressful situation to something you could, focus on and relax and go back to like a normal yourself.
Train.
And again, it's you're creating your own safe space. It's your safe space. It's what you feel safe space should look like or sounds like, and that's what's making it unique. That I'm always saying the same thing. Like people are suggesting meditation. I've been doing, long time ago. I've been doing a Tai Chi for about 10 years, 12 years, and I know how hard it is to meditate. And it was like, what do you mean meditate? It probably took me like a couple years to learn how to meditate. It was like your suggestions, and I've heard these suggestions from I traveled to some strange part of the world and talked to some military people, veterans, and they're like, yeah, VA told us, meditate, and they're like, you're joking. We don't know how to meditate. It's like,
it needs to be free.
So this option of a place where your brain will feel safer and more, kind of a more relaxed. And we're trying to create this idea that you don't have to go to exposure therapy to go to the mental wellness part. You feel tired, you feel, uncomfortable. Just put your headsets, create something for yourself or do a virtual traveling. We have plenty of options, anything from Cyprus to Iceland and London, Paris.
I've seen that.
Go take a look at this. And again, your choice. We do not collect any information. It's your own space, do whatever. And to have this option that wasn't available before, I'm all for options, It was never an option. Now it is an option.
For those of you who aren't maybe following about the safe space aspect of this and how unique this is, it's so cool. So for example, we as a clinician can ask the person in front of us where they feel most comfortable, and they can just describe it. Then it occurs in front of them. Say, for example, it's on a beach. This was my last example. We were doing phobia of driving, which this is something you can't do in real life. You can't be driving, be stressed, and then switch to the beach immediately. You can't do that. And so the person describes a beach with mountains in the distance and nice flowing waves. And we do some breathing exercises in this space. They're loving it. They said it's beautiful. That was the feedback. And then we progress through levels of exposure therapy for driving. We do some just basic driving on a highway where there's no other vehicles. And then we kind of progress towards driving where there's a few more vehicles and we're coming down a mountain. And they said it's too much. With one click of the button, we're back in the safe space. And that's incredible. And they really appreciated that. So we got to push it to a level that actually became uncomfortable, which is normal in exposure therapy. Of course, it's going to happen. And then we're able to retreat in a way that is sort of uplifting and positive for them. And I just love that about your tool.
I don't. Yeah, thank you. That was an idea. Again, we were asking about kind of our advisors how the ideal session should look like. They told us that it kind of makes sense to do that, and that's what we implemented.
Yeah.
And I think overall, and I honestly I don't. Yeah, my fears and phobias level. I have a couple phobias, but not a lot at my age. Granted my experience, so I'm still using a headset and just playing with it, and I love this option. And you're just you have a filters. You could create this kind of a multiple world. My first experience when we implemented this, I actually asked for a house on the moon with a view of Earth,
Wow.
right? So it's like, not, I mean, I was just curious if
Yeah.
it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually did. And it was super cute because I didn't know. I mean, we were doing this AI, we were experimenting with
Mm-hmm.
AI. It was like a couple years ago when it was just starting, and I don't know what is possible. So my second kind of a scenario was like, okay, I like moon, so I want a house on Mars. So and it actually built a house on Mars,
Wow.
and this is really cool. And then I start playing with the different filters, and that I spent there an hour, and I didn't even know where the hour went.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somewhere stressed before going there. After an hour, I'm just like, well, okay, now I'm not stressed. I'm curious, and I'm really, really excited that the technology is working, and I'm really excited to share this because I think it's super cool.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The curiosity piece always comes up for me, and the interest really in the technology comes up, even if people are coming in with anxiety. Of course, it's quite distracting from the actual anxieties they're dealing with because they're doing something new and different, and it's physical too. It's an actual physical device, and then you feel like you're in the physical world. You have that feeling, that sense, which is what's most important. But what, Peter, though, like, what are the side effects? Because it can't all be good. What could people experience that might go wrong?
There are no side effects of what we do per se. They are as side effects of virtual reality as a device. And the most well documented side effects, for example, some dizziness, some motion sickness, that sort of thing. Granted that it's less than 1% of the population. So, the first time everybody got, your brain is adjusting, you will get a little bit kind of uncomfortable. The first, everyone got a little bit uncomfortable. If you will do too much, it will go away. Again, small percent of the population will keep this, dizziness and motion sickness. Yes, there is a much more serious side effects. So like people with epilepsy,
Mm-hmm.
not recommended.
Right.
Or people with some heart conditions, not recommended. But that comes kind of like, that's what they're writing on a box,
Mm-hmm.
that don't use it with certain, if you have a certain conditions. But again, it's virtual reality. It's not our application. Doesn't really matter what application you're using in virtual reality. It's the same kind of a warning comes on the label that not 100% safe if you have a certain conditions. True. I can also say that our experience was that it's not a kind of a warning label or anything. I've seen people, not 100% will be fully engaged. True, some people still think it's a game. Some people saying that VR headset is too heavy. It's actually not, but it's a personal feelings, and we have to respect that. Other than that, honestly speaking, we haven't seen any serious limitations. Moreover, I can tell you that we're focusing on anxiety, but we're running some research about autism, about schizophrenia. And so, honestly speaking, I think the applications of VR could be much wider and should be much wider. And I feel like we're just starting because, again, all my conversations with people who are dealing with autism, I think it could be absolutely wonderful tool for autism. And as a matter of fact, Stanford is running research on autism for children and using our VR headset and our application. I'm very optimistic because I think it's the benefits would be much better than, yes, VR headset has limitations like
Mm-hmm.
anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are having issues with the mobile phones. So
Definitely. No, for sure. The benefits outweigh the risks here. Absolutely.
Technology is always comes with some interesting stuff, and especially honestly, I see that limitations, like for example, AI, we're very cautious about AI because it could create some very interesting kind of a side effects. That's why we're slowly getting there. But we've seen, for example, scenes where people asked to create some scene and it was a horse in the middle of that. I was like, I don't know where a horse came from. I mean,
Yes.
AI created a horse in the middle of scenario. Okay,
Right.
it's like enjoy. So,
For sure.
but again, create this mental health. The safe space in advance. Save it in advance. So if you want to avoid these kind of options, a horse in the middle of
Good
your
point.
scenario.
Yeah, in advance. I like that. Even Peter, I'll say that my experience with the dizziness is that I've had one person experience it and it went away within a few minutes, maybe even a few seconds of removing the device. And I will, double down on the fact that the mask is quite light. Even though people will perceive that this is going to be look like a very clunky, heavy thing, it's not. It's very light and well tolerated mostly.
Apple Vision Pro is heavy. I mean, I know if you ever tried the Apple Vision Pro, but I wouldn't recommend that is a heavy piece of equipment.
Really?
Meta Quest 3 and 3S are fairly light. Actually, I don't know if you know, it was Oculus Quest, and Palmer Luckey, 17-year-old kid, created this.
Unbelievable.
I saw him speaking at one of the conferences, and he is still a goofy kid for me, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool. For someone who's maybe not, as used to this type of approach to, say, for example, phobia, what have you seen for the number of treatments necessary? Like if someone's looking to invest in this program, well, they can get ready for, preparing their clients and patients for treatment. How many treatments usually would someone be doing with this?
It really depends. It's not a silver bullet. There is no. It depends on severity. It depends on many reasons. I can honestly tell you that people will see the progress, and that's what we absolutely stand by. People will see the progress within 3-4 treatments. They will see the progress. I can honestly say that we've seen, again, people are getting significantly better after 1 week. We've seen people getting significantly better after a couple weeks. But again, it depends on how motivated they are. It depends on the severity of the original and other things and complexity. And here's the reason why we don't deal in a 99%. We don't want to deal with, for example, individuals. We had a call with one guy, and he's like, I have a fear of driving. And I was like, okay. And it was like when we just started, and I was like, okay, so I'm not, have you talked to the doctor? No, I haven't talked to the doctor. Maybe you should. Well, I what's the big deal? I have a fear of driving. Do you have something for the driving? And I was like, yes, but are you afraid of driving on the highways in a city? What? Oh, yeah, it's a highway. So highway where? Oh, on the bridges. I was like, do you have a fear of heights? And he's like, yeah, I have a fear of heights. Well, maybe you should address a fear of heights first before if you have to, address a fear of driving. Maybe you should talk to professional. It's like if you're addressing a wrong thing, you're not going to get a good result. So that's why we're always like, you have to talk to clinician, you have to talk to professional. You have to address the right thing. If you're not addressing the right thing, you're not going to get a good result. We definitely we are providing a tool that will make this journey much easier and much faster.
Oh, absolutely. So severity is very important, but what would the patient journey be like in the sense of, let's say it was fear of heights? Where would the clinician typically start? Would they start with taking them to the spot where they remembered that they were scared of a height, or would they start at a low height? How does it go?
again, remember, you're not talking to a clinician, you're talking to IT guy. But I can tell you that our advisors, the general recommendation is, depends on if it was a traumatic experience, or they remember traumatic experience. Are they doing CBT or MDR? So fear of heights, basically, we have a few scenarios, and a lot of our scenarios are built on like a gradual exposure. So we will take it to the lowest level, just to get people comfortable, just to push a little bit the limit of their, being comfortable, and start from there, because we have a apartment with a balcony. Again, depends on what people could relate to, or we got a building with escalators, right? So depends on how, where, and what the stimuli is, and what kind of. But we're definitely, because it's again, these scenarios have a 6 degrees of freedom. You could come closer, further. You could get closer to the ledge, or closer to the escalator, and so on and so forth. But the idea is to push your boundaries of comfortable and uncomfortable, and keep pushing it, and transition to this mental wellness side. And again, it's very easy, it's very intuitive. Just press a button, transition there and back, and keep pushing these boundaries. And if that's not enough, we'll build you some scenario using AI where you could push it even further.
Exactly.
It will push your boundaries. It's kind of like very funny, because we did one of the studies at the East Carolina University, and it was really interesting, because they found some students, and they all came. They said that they don't have any fears and phobias. Turns out that they all have a fear of spiders and the fear of heights.
For sure.
It's like, so yeah, it was like, surprise, surprise. Students don't know what they're afraid of, but a bigger picture is they all were, they were able to overcome these fears, and fairly fast. And with a, it's like with a virtual reality that makes this journey. And again, younger generation, he was like, I'm an old guy. But younger generation is getting into this virtual reality much faster. And yeah, they all loved it. It's fun.
Oh,
too.
definitely. You mentioned there about pushing the boundaries, and I'd like to share how I help people find out where that boundary is. We do both physical and mental emotional assessments. The physical assessment would be the heart rate. So we're tracking how the heart rate is changing while they're in the exposure. And then the second would be subjective perceptions of stress, or perceptions of discomfort, I should say. And so we say, this is a 10 out of 10. This is a 5 out of 10. Where are we standing currently? And that helps us figure out how far we have gone that day, and where we could maybe go next time, or if there's more room for us to push today.
Absolutely. The scale is very important. And sometimes our experience is this emotional component, because heart rate is physical response, but your emotional component could be like, you could feel worse or you could feel better than so that is very important. And if people will see the progress, and we have a dashboard where they could see the progress, how they're doing, it's also super important, in terms of motivation, and just to show them how well they're doing, and reassuring that it's possible and they're doing better. Is, I think it's also super important.
Definitely. Well, we've learned so much from you today, Peter, and I think everyone who's listening will be interested in what you're offering, and I'm sure they're thinking currently about the patients that they're working with this chronic anxiety, phobia, discomfort in their own environments that cannot be changed, and how great the tool could be. But where can people find out more about your company? Where should we look?
They could go to our website. It's PsyTechVR, PsyTechVR.com. They could find us there. And thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, I mean, we're very easy. We got a 30 days free trial, no obligation, nothing. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But It's kind of funny. It's what we're telling our advisors, that so far our churn rate was about 5-6%. So people, when start using it, they usually keep using it because that's a really good option.
Absolutely. That's incredible. That's great to hear. Forward looking, I think people will really value that comment. So, well, thanks so much for your time today, Peter. It was really great to chat with you, and thanks for coming on Personalized to talk with me.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure. I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk again soon. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Deiser and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.